Hi, friends. It's Pooja Desai, your host in Heels. Welcome to Heels and Boots on the Ground. In this Food versus Mood episode, we welcome back my dear friend and certified integrative nutritionist, Donna. Donna joined us on an earlier episode, and we discussed why it is so important to make sure you eat well to feel well. And today we're going to continue on that journey because there's so much knowledge that Donna has that it would be a shame not to keep inviting her back as many times as possible. Donna, you're already a fan favorite, not only in my household, but anyone that I meet always hears about me talk about Donna, Donna, Donna. So here you are. Welcome back.
Thank you, Pooja. My pleasure.
I'm so excited. I think that, covering a lot of, why we should develop, teaching children at a young age how to eat well is so important. And I think that if you could talk a little bit more on, what type of food people should probably, obviously, you're a nutritionist, so that you would obviously, every one person is not the same. But any tips and anything that you have to share would be greatly appreciated with the listeners.
Okay. So, if we're thinking about types of food to put in the body, especially children, I would say limit the amount of chemicals. I mean, everyone has heard now of these forever chemicals. A lot of even towns are putting out letters to their people that buy the water, telling them reduce that there's a lot of forever chemicals in the water that's supposed to
Wow.
be filtered. So these forever chemicals in a smaller child have the potential to do more damage. One of
Okay.
the things I test in my practice is how toxic is the child from a urine sample. And I look for the forever chemicals, plastics, pesticides. So we know that these chemicals store in the body, and depending upon the genetics of the person, they have the potential to do some really bad things. So, eat clean, which is reducing the amount of chemicals, artificial colors in the foods, those are all petrochemicals, and they make children's brain get very hyper excited. So, as clean as you can. That's why even Whole Foods or any of the natural food industry has always been increasing, even when there's been economic downturn, because
Mm.
people realize that the food supply has become really toxic. I was very happy this week that Nestle company came out and said, as in 1 year, the artificial colors are out of their foods.
Wow.
And that's a very, very big undertaking because they are everywhere. So great news. We're at least going to get that help.
No, that
So
makes a lot of sense,
makes a lot of
especially,
sense.
when you hear about, and I hear this even very commonly with the gluten allergy that I have, right? You
Right?
hear that if you go to Italy, it's not the same. You could eat the pasta where you can't do it in certain countries because of how it's
Correct.
processed.
Yep.
So,
How it's processed, how it's grown, what it's sprayed with. The
right.
glyphosate is a huge cancer causer, right? So that would be my first thing is when you start to feed a child that is at a small age, you want to put in the cleanest food you could find
Right.
because the chemicals are going to be storing. The other thing that would be happening is we don't want to overfeed children carbohydrates, right? Carbohydrates are important for children. Good carbohydrates, potato, clean rice, even some good pastas are fine. Good fruits, even some vegetables have carbs. But we don't want to put processed carbs in because it changes the gut bacteria, and the gut bacteria is your whole health. So the gut bacteria affects us by making our personality, our mood, our body's inability to be inflamed. It's connected into different cancers. So the gut bacteria is everything, and we want to feed the good bacteria. It's also good to feed children fermented foods, which
Mm.
would be yogurt. And some people will give a little bit of sauerkraut or kimchi if the child likes it. The fermentation helps the good bacteria to stay alive and be strong. Also important, this would usually be based on weight. And I do these calculations in my office based on weight. Children would need protein and adequate for what they weigh. So I notice a lot of children do not eat enough protein. Protein is the building blocks of everything. And if you don't have enough protein, your body can't grow properly, your brain can't grow properly and stay healthy. So those are important. And I think one of the other important things I tell the kids is eat the rainbow, right? So we want to eat every color, from the plant world, red, orange, green, purple, even, because in those colors are amazing antioxidant protection. So that's a
Wow.
good place at least to start. And then also make sure your child has good quality oils in their diet and not processed seed oils. That's omega-6, inflammation. Those also affect the child's brain, anybody's brain. If we eat a lot of processed foods, the brain is very affected by that inflammation.
That's amazing because that should actually be for adults as well, right?
Hmm.
We're focusing in on children. And, something that came to my mind as I'm listening to you talk is, you know, as adults, our accountability and responsibility to ourselves is so important too. Because if you think about it, and I'm thinking about when I was, when the baby was first born, I wanted to put anything and everything healthy in the baby. But
Right.
as we get older, we should also be putting anything and healthy into us. So, to give you an example, I could have very well been feeding the baby something healthy while I'm eating a bag of chips, right?
Correct.
And why? Because I'm on the run. I have a career, I have to do this, I have to be mom. But the point is, when I'm hearing you talk, that's the realize, you start realizing that you should be treating yourself as if you were the baby,
Correct.
because you deserve those good, rainbow foods as well. And here we are, as we get, to an age, we start cutting those things out and bringing in the bad things.
That's
So
true.
thank you for
Even
that
if
enlightenment.
if you think of it even as an anti-aging, right? So what is aging? What does it mean? The body is, as we age, as we get older, right? A child's cells duplicate and replicate very quickly. That's why when children get cancer, it just is such a quick, usually a quick thing, right? Because the body is in that fast mode. As we get older, the amount of cells that we produce are less than the amount that's dying off because it
Right.
takes longer. So you could literally, if you change your food and your habits, your stress reduction, take the proper supplements for yourself, get out in the sun, you could actually change the quality of the new cells being produced because they have a shelf life. So a red blood cell lasts about 3 months, white blood cell a little over 6 months. So you could change what's happening by changing the food. And genetics plays into things, of course, right? But there is a whole field of epigenetics, which means that you have to release the bad genes or good ones that you got. And so if your family has genes that are not in a good place for certain conditions, heart disease, cancer, whatever it is, to me, it makes the most sense to try to manipulate those genes. That's why they call it functional nutrition, because they know that we have the ability to change the cells. How long does it take to change a human adult? Probably about a year and a half
Wow.
till you get newer cells coming in because it's a slow process.
Right.
Children, it's a much quicker process. But still, what do you have to lose? And you feel better in the interim because if you start putting in better foods, most people that I have seen as patients, I think out of thousands, there was maybe two or three when we cleaned up the diet, they said that they didn't feel any different. Everyone else says, yes, I feel different. I'm
I mean,
different,
I can definitely relate. I mean,
right?
the plant you put me on, I feel like I have more energy. I can do more things. I'm not
Right.
as
You feel
tired
better.
as much. I like to say that my skin starts looking more radiant. Today
Of
it's my
course.
makeup, but
Because it's
it does have a
anti-aging,
correlation,
right? It's
especially the
anti-aging.
blueberries.
Also, if you think about it, when we say anti-aging, so what does aging mean? Every cell dies and make
Right.
a new one, right? But the aging process, wrinkles, when people have a lot of brown spots, all these types of things, it's really because, let's take the wrinkles. The skin is losing the elasticity. And
Hmm.
then, of course, the hormones would be changing, right? So we don't want to do things that make our hormones weaker. Most people that I test today have hormonal imbalances. It's not rare. And how is all this hormonal imbalance coming in? If you eat, if you don't, unless you eat organic dairy, you're getting a lot of hormones in the dairy.
Right.
The cattle industry uses the most antibiotics of everything, of even more than humans. They try to keep it so that the milk is not infected, right? The meat is not infected. Think about chickens. They're pumped up with hormones unless you buy hormone free. And
Right.
we'll never be 100% hormone free from the animal because it's an animal, but I don't
Right.
want extra pumped up stuff because our body can't handle it. We have delicate hormonal systems. And if we put all that extra in, no good. Then we look at plastics, microplastics. They actually go in the vessels and can cause heart disease. We look at the parabens that's in skincare. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can just go into a store. It's not how much you spend. I've done a lot of research on this. You can go into a store, and if you pick up a skincare item, make sure it doesn't have parabens because parabens disturb the estrogen in our body. So we want to like just lighten up as much junk as possible coming in so that your body doesn't have to process all that out.
Right. Right. And I mean, think of the body's working extra hard to do that. Where, if you do
Extra
eat
hard.
organically, you wouldn't be struggling as much.
It's
I mean,
less work. It's just
it
less
really
work
is.
on the body. Remember, the human body is really not a clean machine. We make
Right.
a lot of waste for our size. There's multiple ways that we detox,
Right.
right? We breathe, that's detox. Stuff comes out of our skin, that's all your eczema, psoriasis people. And
Right.
then we have a bowel, luckily, hopefully, if we have a bowel every day, that's all bacteria coming out. So there's a lot of stuff in our body. And so we need to lighten that load.
Right. Donna, this has been amazing. I can't thank you enough for, joining us again and again, because I'm going to have you back. And really, this journey, is for everyone, not just children. If you could get it in front of your kids, this is so beneficial, to do it in advance before they do become chronically ill. And then you have to back into something like this. Donna, so knowledgeable. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Follow us for another episode of Heels and Boots on the Ground. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Pooja.
Thank you, Donna.
Take care.
Take care.